Good morning. I am on my way to meet with a client. Got a little bit of a drive, so just wanted to come on here and talk about why I moved to Indiana from Scottsdale, Arizona. A little bit about me. As you can imagine, I was born in Scottsdale, Arizona, in Phoenix, the Valley of the Sun, and you got 330 days of sunshine a year, probably more than that. Wintertime temps, right now it's March when I'm filming this, so I mean, it's 75 degrees out in Scottsdale, and right now looks like it is 36 degrees. So one thing you may ask is like, what the heck? Why did you leave a place that had such great weather to move to a place that had such crappy weather? That's a multi-pronged answer, but there's a lot of reasons, but I figured I would condense it down to 3. But before we even get into that, you're probably wondering how I ended up here in the first place. So the thing that initially brought me out to Indiana was a football scholarship at Indiana University. I was a long snapper and was fortunate enough to have earned a scholarship, not right out of high school, that's a story for another time, but was able to earn a full ride scholarship to IU. I came out and visited in April of 2011, so coming up on 13 years since I first visited Indiana. Prior to that, I hadn't been east of Chicago. There's a whole section of this country that, I never saw it because we traveled around the West Coast growing up, but never made it that far east. And it's entirely different from Arizona. So much greenery. Like, you have 4 seasons, and I just remember driving from the airport down to Bloomington, which is about an hour south of Indianapolis. And I just couldn't get over. I was immediately enchanted by all the charm of the small towns we were driving through. Arizona, you've got, 3 or 4 major cities, depending on who you ask. You have Phoenix, Tucson, Flagstaff, and Yuma. And there's not a lot in between those 4 cities. Like, you can just drive for 2 hours and not really come across a small town. There's a lot of interstates. Makes travel a lot more convenient out west. That's another topic for another video, but yeah, it was just like we just went through small town after small town, and we went through 3 or 4 different counties in the span of a hour drive from the airport, which is just crazy to me because the county that I grew up in, Maricopa County, is one of the largest in the nation. You could drive for over an hour and still be in Maricopa County. So to come from a place where everything's so spread out to a place where everything's much more condensed, a lot more small towns to drive through, I don't know, it was just something that was like, I remember sitting and, seeing like the checkerboard signs and like, man, you just don't see this where I'm at. Like, Indiana is about 100 years older of a state than Arizona is. And so it just has that character that you don't really see in newer states like Arizona. So my interest was piqued in this nondescript Midwestern state over the course of a 1-hour drive from the airport. Sorry, I just had to stop for a little coffee and breakfast. So back to how I ended up in Indiana. I got the football scholarship, started 4 years there, started every game, and you would think that after 4 years of brutal Indiana winters, they're really not that bad. 4 years of horrible winters, gray, cold, I would be yearning to go back to the warm sunshine of Arizona, and that I would book the first flight back home, but that wasn't the case. After 4 years of living in the Hoosier state, I really fell in love with it. And the primary reason, which I'll get into, is the people. There's a saying, it's Hoosier hospitality. It's a phrase that's pretty common around here, and it just describes the culture, the way that people operate. Everyone here is just, not everybody, but generally, if you're going to meet somebody, they're going to be really down to earth, regardless of their social status. I found, contrasted to growing up in Scottsdale, which is a pretty affluent city, people are much more likely to treat you a certain way based off of, the clothes you wear or the car you drive or how much money you make, where out here, you're treated like a human being regardless of that. And really, I think the way that you're treated based off of, I just say, I don't know, it's like more of a level playing field out here when the way that people treat you. It's like there's no like strings attached. It's just a genuine sense of community. So let me give you a story to kind of compare and contrast the community aspect that you see here in the Midwest. So like growing up in Arizona, you don't really know, like you'll maybe know your next door neighbors, but then you may know the neighbors on next door to them. But I found it's a lot more of a, you get home from work, you go in the garage, shut the garage behind you, and then you mind your business. Like you don't really take the time to get to know your neighbors or spend time with your neighbors. Where in Indiana, I remember going home with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, to her neighborhood where she grew up. I remember one morning I was sitting in the kitchen eating breakfast. All of a sudden, the door to the garage opens up and in walks their next door neighbor. And he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm Tony. I'm just grabbing some milk. Tell him I'll, bring it back." And I was just like, my mind was blown. Like I couldn't imagine that happening in Arizona. Like it was just a concept that was so foreign. And that's like an extreme example. That's an example of the kind of community, like it's very close knit out here. And I have a theory on that I tell people is like your community out here was a necessity where they needed that community to survive the harsh cold winters. And the reason the community isn't as strong in Arizona is, well, A, because most people are transplants, but B, is the weather's so nice. So there's not really, apart from the summers, you don't really have a reason to like have that network, have those relationships in place. So yeah, that's just my theory. But yeah, so with that community, I kind of experienced that firsthand coming out from Arizona. Like in college, my roommate was from Indianapolis, and during the summers when we would have summer workouts, he'd invite me to come home and spend time with his family because I didn't have any family out here at the time. So, just those gestures, they really had a massive impression on me. And I met my wife in college. So I guess you could say that's a fourth reason. But honestly, like I knew I wanted to settle down out here even before I met her. So she just kind of confirmed it. So the second reason that I wanted to stay out in Indiana and not move back to Arizona was the cost of living. So as a newly graduated college student, so I don't have the numbers for when I graduated, but the housing market, it's exploded everywhere. Arizona saw a massive influx from California after COVID, during and after COVID. And so the cost of living in the valley has just become astronomical, and it's really unattainable for any young adult to purchase a home. So the median sales price of a home in Phoenix is $475,000. $475,000. That's crazy. Like you can't touch that. And now contrast that with the median sales price in Indianapolis. It's $237,000. You're talking literally less than half of the median home price comparing the two metropolitan areas. I mean, it's just like if you're looking to buy your first home, your dollar goes so much further out here. And granted, there's reasons why Phoenix is more expensive. It can be more appealing. People do get sick of the winters and they want to be around the sunshine. But like for me, I've lived here 13 years. It's not that bad. Like I always tell people, you can always put on another jacket, no matter where you live, unless it's San Diego. You have 3 or 4 months of the year where you don't want to be outside. Ours is from, December to March. Phoenix is from May through August. So you just got to pick your poison. Like, do you want to shovel snow or brand yourself with a seatbelt in the summertime? I've done that. It's not fun, trust me. But yeah, speaking to that cost of living difference, like I have a client I'm working with now who's moving here from Colorado, and they're moving because the cost of living around Denver is astronomical, and they can get more for their house and kind of pocket that money, and their dollar goes a lot further here in Indy. Or they could, downsize a little bit and then use that money to invest elsewhere. So it's really, Indy has a ton of appeal because of that lower cost of living. Even when you get into neighborhoods like Carmel or Westfield or Zionsville, so your prospects of home ownership, and not just home ownership, but being in a home that you would want to be in for a long time, is just so much more attainable here in Indianapolis than it is in Phoenix. And the last reason has to do with Indianapolis's nickname, the Crossroads of America. One reason that I love being out here as opposed to Phoenix is just how many major cities are within 4 or 5 hour drive, where you could do, you know, a day trip or a weekend trip, and it doesn't feel like you're wasting all your time in the car. You've got Chicago, Cincinnati, Columbus, Detroit, St. Louis, Nashville, just to name a few, Knoxville, Louisville, Lexington. You've got the Bourbon Trail if you want to hit that in Kentucky. Like, there is just so much to do. You can be on the shores of Lake Michigan in 2.5 hours. I mean, it's just like, where growing up in Phoenix, if you wanted to go to the ocean, it was a 6.5 hour drive, and you had to sit through, you know, tons of traffic leaving town, and then even more traffic when you got into Southern California, and that is a whole nother level. Where even if you want to, like, Arizona is so massive, and granted there's like a lot to explore in Arizona, but if you wanted to leave the state, you've got to drive at least 5 hours. I mean, you could drive 3 hours from Phoenix and be in Mexico if you wanted, but like, as far as like other American states to explore and other cities, you have so much more that's so much closer. So what exactly makes Indianapolis the Crossroads of America? Well, you have 3 major interstates that run through it, which is more than any other city in the United States. It's I-65, which starts just outside of Chicago, Illinois, and runs all the way south to Mobile, Alabama. There's I-69, which starts in Port Huron, Michigan, and will eventually run completely connected down to the US-Mexico border in South Texas. And then I-70, which runs east-west, starts in Baltimore, Maryland, and ends in the middle of Utah. So just on those 3 major superhighways, you can get almost anywhere in the country. And if you're a road tripper like myself, I don't really like flying. I just see that as a huge asset, like, just to be able to, you know, get to where you want to be and, you know, do the classic American road trip every summer, or, you know, winter if you're trying to escape the snow. So to recap, the 3 reasons why I moved from Arizona to Indianapolis and stayed are, number 1, the people. Like I said, once you experience this Hoosier hospitality, it's contagious, it's addictive, and you want to be around it all the time. You just have to experience it for yourself. Number 2 is the cost of living. Home ownership in Indianapolis is so much more attainable than it was back home in Phoenix, Arizona. The amount of house you get for your money, your dollar just goes so much further. If you're a first-time home buyer, if you're looking to relocate, you should really take a look at Indianapolis. You have a ton of options in the sub $300,000 price range, which is ideal for a first-time home buyer. And finally, you have the central location of Indianapolis. With Indy being the Crossroads of America, it's a connection to 3 superhighways. Your possibilities are endless for a summer road trip, and there's so many major cities you can visit outside of Indianapolis that you can do on a weekend trip. I mean, it's just, you can't beat it. So if you resonated with those things and you're interested in making Indianapolis home, check out the link in my bio below. I've got some great resources. I've got a local guide for the north side of Indy, the suburbs, Carmel, Westfield, Zionsville, Fishers, Noblesville. You can start there. If you want, you can book an appointment with me. I can give you a free consultation, kind of discuss what your needs are if you're interested in moving to the area, and we can get a game plan going. So if you stayed here this long, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Hit the notification bell and like this video. It helps me out a ton. I really appreciate it. So again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.